Mr. Biggles, Mr. Biggles, hello, I love your name. Says, hello, how do you contend with the use of the past and history to justify motions to rebalance the present? It's like it taps into our sense of fairness and can be very persuasive, at least for me. Well, I think what you're talking about is this ideology, as we've mentioned, is a mutated kind of Marxism. So the Marxism that you may have learned about, hopefully learned about in school, a lot of people didn't. I didn't. But the Marxism of past basically said that we need to redistribute wealth so we can achieve fairness. And this ideology says we need to redistribute power among identity groups so we can achieve fairness. And the way that I deal with that is I look at it on its face, and it is wrong. You can't rob your neighbor for something he didn't do and say this is justified because of your whatever class group you're in or whatever racial group you're in or whatever sex group you're in, that I can now take something from you. That's, first of all, if you're doing it on the basis of identity, if you're doing it on the basis of race and sex, it's racist and sexist. You're literally robbing this person because of what race they are, because of what sex they are. That's not fair. That, in what world is that fair?
Yeah, but so that's the thing. That the problem is there was unfairness in the past. That's
right.
True. And there is even some today in places,
yes.
right? In situations.
But you don't correct unfairness with more unfairness.
Right. So the thing that you've got to wrestle with, I think, which is maybe not always fun to deal with psychologically, but parents sometimes say this to kids, right? There's a phrase, life isn't fair, kid. Sometimes life isn't fair, and sometimes it's past the time to be able to rectify it. The people who did it, the people who are responsible, and the people who suffered directly are no longer around. And when especially when the people that are responsible are no longer around, the possibility of restitution dies with them. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but that's the truth of it, because it's fairness or unfairness or action, moral behavior or immoral behavior, those are ascribed to individuals. Those are people, not groups. Whites didn't do anything to blacks. Some white people did bad things to some black people, most black people in America. But that's not when you allow them to substitute identity groups for individuals and then demand fairness, that's when you get yourself into a hell of a lot of trouble. You've got to keep in mind that, like, fairness is a moral claim. It's a moral idea, the idea of fairness, right? It's in the realm of ethics, and ethics applies to individuals. Ethics does not apply to groups. There's no such thing as a group's ethics. I mean, unless every single person in the group has the exact same ethic. So that's where they get you. They convince you that there was unfairness, and they're right, but they gloss over the difference between individuals and groups, and they ignore the fact that that unfairness is not resolvable any longer. The best you can do is to recognize what caused it and root that out so that you don't
root that out
in the future.
Yes, the answer is to end the unfairness, end any type of discrimination that is upheld in the law. Anything that in the law that you can change it. If there are other personal structural things, because they want to talk about institutionalized isms all the time, combat that culturally. But you don't fix it by doing the same thing from a flip side. From a philosophical standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. It's like you don't cure racism with racism. You don't cure sexism with sexism. There's no way to cure collectivism with collectivism. You're just replacing it with another kind of collectivism. The answer is treating people as individuals. That's always been the answer, and that's what's helped us to progress as far as we have. That's why we're where we're at in society, and now we're moving backwards again. Weird. We got this far because we started treating people as individuals, because of the ideas of with Martin Luther King appealed to our common humanity. He used the inclusive words, truly inclusive words, we, us. He helped people to see that race doesn't matter, that we're equal, that you should treat people equally, regardless of race. The same thing with sex. You should treat people equally, regardless of sex. And now, instead of appealing to our common humanity and trying to help us see if we're going to be, to see ourselves as part of one large tribe, now we're back to this idea of like the other. It's all about the other. Well, I'm in this group, you're in that group. I've got to treat you this way because you're in that group, and I got to treat you that way because you're in this group and you're in that group. So that means I definitely have to treat you this way. It's just wrong. It's poison. It doesn't take us anywhere good. And it is surprising that it's become so popular. And you're right, Mr. Bickles. It's become popular because they sell it as they try and sell it as fairness. It's not. That's why they have to redefine the words. How do they convince you, if you're against racism, how do they convince you that that the moral thing to do is to judge people based on what sex they are and what race they are, what sexuality they are, and to treat them differently based on what group they're in? How do they get you to do that? Well, they have to redefine what those words mean, what racism means, what sexism means, because they can't get you to do that easily. I think we've been raised in a liberal culture with liberal ideas of individualism and equality. And there's something in our guts against that. And so they have to convince you it's good to start doing this now. It's good to go back to the days where you looked at someone's race or sex or sexuality and you treated them differently. And they tell you, well, why should you do this? Well, because there's so many racists and sexists out there and we have to combat them by becoming racist and sexist ourselves. No, it changes you. Don't let them change you. I can go on a rant about this. I'm sorry. You've heard all this before, Carter.
You're not talking to me. You're talking to the audience. You did go on a rant, and it was a good one. Embrace it. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
It just makes me, it's sad, but don't let it change you. One person, you can change the world around you just by not letting this ideology change you. Let people see what you believe in your actions and how you treat other people. And it's really, it's not just that this ideology tells you to treat white people differently and white people don't get to speak or whatever, white people need to apologize on behalf of their race and white people, blah, blah, blah. It's also that it tells you to treat anyone who's not white differently. It's racist towards everyone. That's why these white social justice warriors in a lot of the groups I'm in, the female white women, the white women who are social justice warriors, they're always confessing in these groups how they have trouble making friends with women of color. It's weird, but I think it's because they've adopted an ideology that's telling them to look at women of color differently and to treat them differently. So when they meet someone, they're not just saying, "Hi, I'm Carrie. Hi, Carter. Nice to meet." They're not meeting people as individuals. They're meeting an individual and they're treating that individual as a group. And so there's this example I've given a lot, but it was the white woman who said that a black woman had moved to her town and she's like, I want to befriend her. Well, first of all, why do you so eagerly, desperately want to befriend just because she's a woman of color? It's really condescending. It's like you're trying to collect her. But let's say
But she is trying to collect her.
She's trying to collect her. But let's just say genuinely you want to make friends and she happens to be a woman of color. She was saying, I can't ask her this question. I can't ask her this question to get to know. And I can't ask her this one because I've learned these are all microaggressions. Like, that's ridiculous. You would ask those questions of a white person. Why wouldn't you ask it of her? So you've just started treating her differently because she's black? That's racist. That's racist. And no wonder you can't. I was going to say, no wonder you can't form a genuine connection with someone because you're not treating her genuinely. You're not coming into that meeting with this new person in good faith and honest and open and raw and human. You're coming into it like, I'm a white woman. You are a black woman. Let me figure out the right robotic questions I can ask you to prove that I'm a good white person and you should want to be my friend. That's so condescending. Gross. I wouldn't want to be friends with you either. Sorry.
No, Yeah. And you've accepted all these premises about what it means to be a black person. So
Yes.
you're like, well, I'd love to meet you for coffee, but I know you can't show up on time, and that's white supremacy. So, I'll just wait for you because you'll probably be late. And I know you can't do math because math is white. So I'll handle the math transaction with Starbucks because I know you can't count change because that's a white thing. And like all of these condescending beliefs they have about black people. If I were a black person, the last person I would want to befriend is a white person who believed those things about me because of my race. It's like, it blows my mind.
It's gross. It's so gross. I don't know why sometimes I'm baffled that they can't see it, but it's the last, nobody wants to be friends with someone like that. No wonder all of your friends are other cult members. Yeah, and they're not really friends. As I say,
you have
social
a bunch
justice
of white liberal elitist friends who sit around talking about black people all the time. What is wrong with you?
And you come into the relationship as if you know everything about that individual because you know what black people think. No, you don't. You don't know what that woman thinks. You have no idea. Why don't you meet her as an individual?
So bad.
Anyway.
So bad.